Yo, Elliott.
Yo, so today we got a question from a bro who wants to know, yo, Elliott, what are your favorite Catholic books? Great question, bro, but before we go, you ought to know, my name's Elliott Hulse. I'm a strongman, strength coach. I've been making men strong here on YouTube since 2007, and you just stumbled upon my wisdom channel. If you're sick and tired of letting another year slip by, and you're ready to make 2025 the best year of your life, then click the link down below or go to alphaschool.ai. I got something cool for you on the inside. Now, question, real simple. Yo, Elliott, thanks for noting the book Dominion. I mentioned it in my last video. I found it on Amazon. Can you tell us about other books on Catholicism that you're reading? Many thanks. Well, I'll tell you, man, a good portion of that bookshelf back there are Catholic books. But instead of just giving you, well, I will give you a couple books, but I want to talk in terms of like genres, like what kinds of books I like to read, and then I'll give you an example from each one. So when it comes to the faith, a lot of my attraction to it was because I started to understand the history of Western civilization and the history of the church. So I read books that are associated with the history of the church. One that I like is Christ, the Lord of History. And this book will destroy a lot of the lies that we've been told about what the church is and where we are, how we got where we are based on, so-called revolutions. Revolutions are demonic. Even the American Revolution was inspired by Satan himself. But hey, don't listen to me, just in my opinion. But if you study history, you'll understand what I'm saying is actually fucking true. Everything against cross and crown. And listen, think about cross and crown and how much people hate the cross and crown. And if you hate the crown, you hate it just as much as the cross, because Catholicism, Christianity is a monarchy. Christianity is a monarchy with one king, Christ. And then there are earthly kings that are his representatives. And there should not be church and state need to be together. And it's not so that the church can become the state, like our church actually becomes the state now, but so that the church can elevate the state and make it a divine institution. So I don't know if you know this or not, but Christians don't believe in the unity or the separation of church and state, right? And so we gotta, once you have that understanding, and then you read how the state of Christianity through Catholicism, right? And you're gonna get a lot of bullshit from people who are like, oh, you guys Catholics adopted all the pagan gods in all the statues and stuff and made them Catholic. Yeah. We just turned them, we transmutated them. God transmutated the Roman Empire into the Catholic Church. It wasn't one of these, it wasn't an earthly thing where it was just, we just put it together because out of trickery and sorcery to make people believe. The church is supposed to elevate the state, and he chose Rome. Why? Because all the roads, the expansiveness of Rome. Think about how brilliant God is, that he chose Rome to elevate and make his state on earth through the Catholic Church. That's why I'm Roman fucking Catholic. None of this other fugazi BS. Roman. Who were the strongest people on the planet at that time? The Roman Empire. Think about how great God is, that he made the Roman Empire into his church. He might do the same thing in America. We'll see. But history. Next. So I'm a trainer. I'm a physical person. I deal with the body in a holistic way, fitness and health and strength and all those things. And so as a spiritual practice in Christianity, we can often get lost in the spirituality and forget the divinity of the body. And a lot of Christians do that. They denigrate the body, they denigrate sexuality, they're scared of their own cock. But that's totally anti-Christian and it's totally anti-Catholic. I think it was a heresy called the Manichaean heresy in the 1400s, 1300s. Manichaeans, Manny and the Manichaeans. And they were against the physical body, right? Many Christians today live with that heresy and they don't understand it. But anyway, Pope John Paul II did a great job on creating something called the Theology of the Body. And he gave a series of discourses on the divinity of the body and how it's explained through the Bible. It's all biblical. And he begins with Genesis, and he talks about the words of Christ. Well, anyway, this is a book that was sort of commentary on the Pope's words, by Christopher West. I had him on this channel once before. You can go look up Christopher West on my Elliott Hulse show. And Theology of the Body Explained. So to me, I can't live a faith if it's disembodied. A disembodied faith is ridiculous to me. It doesn't make any sense because we live on a spectrum. We're spirit and we're body. But a lot of Christians are totally disembodied. They're schizoid. Totally schizoid, living in the spiritual world with all their rules and dogma, but they have actually no sensuality whatsoever and they reject the body. I'm not saying all, but a lot. Catholics don't reject the body. That's why we drink wine and party. You go to most Latin American countries that are Catholic, they're having a good time, living in the moment, right? Not getting drunk. That's a sin. Drinking wine, eating fine, and living this physical life like it's divine. It's a very Catholic thing. It's a very Protestant thing. It's a very, work ethic thing to deny the flesh, really deny the flesh in all regards, almost denigrate it, and you just work hard and you read your Bible. Well, that's not the way God made it. And so I like theology of the body. I would also put that my spiritual side. I also have a very spiritual side that is very linear and dogmatic. And I want to be given best practices for developing my spirituality. What does that mean? Just like I mentioned before, electricity is powerful, but if it's not directed through a conduit, it's either useless or it will hurt you. So what I love about the faith is that we have all these saints and we have all these monks, guys who lived in monasteries, guys who dedicated their life to spiritual practices, right? But they were like spiritual warriors, like Ignatius, right? And anyway, this happens to be one of my favorite books on practicing Christian perfection. It's like practicing spirituality, right? A lot of times, I was into Eastern things too, so I get it. A lot of Buddhists are into the 12-fold path, or Buddha's rules, and all the things that Buddha said. Woo, Buddha. But the Catholic Church has 1,000 Buddhas. And we call them monks and hermits, right? And these guys, they lived in such a way that they were trying to figure out how do we live the most spiritual way possible. And this is Alphonsus Rodriguez. I actually got into this genre of reading about how to live spiritually, spiritual rules, by reading Ignatius of Brianachov. So I mentioned Ignatius before. I was talking about Loyola because he was an actual warrior. But in that pile there, I have many of the books that inspired me to faith, and the Orthodox faith inspired me big time. I love Orthodox, and Russian Orthodox in particular. And the first book I read was called The Arena, in this genre of how did they live in monasteries and what were their daily practices. Now, it's going to be impossible for you to do that if you're living in the world, but it's always fascinating to see what they did, especially their mental, the ways of thinking. I'll also add to this another genre I like a lot of different genres, but The Cloud of Unknowing, this is about mystical Christianity. I really like mystical Christianity. I like the Orthodox, but also this is, so it comes from a guy named, I forget, it might be in here early. He was a mystic living at the time of Paul. Apparently, he was a contemporary of Paul. Dionysius, the Areopagus. Dionysius, the mystical theologist. I don't know. I can't say the last name. The Areopagus. Anyway, Dionysius. So that's another genre that just popped into my head as I'm thinking about spiritual practice. That's mystical Christianity. I love that shit. And then, of course, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Catechism of the Catholic Church. That tells you all the things that Catholics actually believe. You ever were wondering what Catholics believe, and you just listening to what Billy Bob Papter, pastor says. Billy Bob, my pastor, in the backyard bar in church says that you shouldn't do that. It's demonic. Well, yeah, but do you actually know what the church teaches? Or are you just going by what Billy Bob Pastor said? Billy Bob Pastor doesn't have anything but the Bible, and he's got a mutilated one at that, missing a whole bunch of books. If you want to know what the church actually believes, you get yourself a catechism. Now, there's a lot of controversy about this catechism. It's more of a newer catechism. And there are those that believe the church has been infiltrated since the 1960s, and I wouldn't argue. The whole world, Western civilization, was infiltrated after during the 1950s, 1960s, right? We didn't win World War II. But if you want a book that's a little bit more like old school, I have the Catechism of the Council of Trent, and you could read that. It reads really old school. This, I like it because the language I like it. It's beautiful language. But they say there's some errors. But if you want to know what the church really teaches prior to a lot of like modernism in the church, you're going to check out the Council of Trent. So I think that's all. Hope that helps y'all.